So first of all, everybody, thank you for coming along today to the first in our new series of mini-fest events that are going to run throughout the course of the year and which have come from the success of the Summer Blended Learning Festival that everybody came to, which was, we had some really good feedback from. So the aim of the mini-fest is to really share and disseminate practice that's taking place across the university. And we're delighted that we got a really good range of speakers today. If you feel inspired from today, then please, on the front page of the Minifest website, there is an event performer template. Please fill it in, send it to Sarah, and come to a future session and actually share some of your own practice and the kind of things that you've actually been doing. We really want to use this Minifest format as just a vehicle to encourage people in the process towards blended and connected learning, and to get some ideas and to enhance and get the confidence around developing their own practice, okay? Just a couple of things for today. So if you can't decide which sessions to go to because you're sport for choice a little bit, don't worry, all the sessions are being recorded and they will be online via the website after the event, and at the moment, probably at the beginning of next week. So please come back and just keep an eye on the site to see those resources uploaded. In terms of accessing today, just simply click on the join the session buttons on the website and you'll go straight in, either directly into the session is something we're experiencing this morning, or you'll be into a waiting room and you will actually be let into the respective sessions. Okay. Just another note, given that it's Remembrance Day today, we will finish just before 11 on the session 2. 11 to 11:15 is a coffee break anyway. So please just take an opportunity to remember in your own way those people that have actually died fighting for their countries this morning. That'd be lovely. I don't think there's anything else. I was going to say there's a fire alarm, but if you do hear a fire alarm, that's in your house, so I'll leave you to deal with that. And on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Amy, who's hosting the first session with the SU. So Amy, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andy. Yes, big warm welcome to everybody. And we are thrilled to be starting the day today with a discussion including our Students' Union and a group of willing students who have agreed to join us this morning to share their experiences of blended and connected learning. As in the spirit of everything that we do, we like to work hand in hand with our students, and the student voice has been very central to a lot of the work that was done over the summer. So I will hand over now to Rama. I believe they're going to share some data from their insights team, and then we will move into a panel discussion with the students. Can I ask that while Rama is introducing their sort of findings so far around the student voice, if there are any questions that you would like to put to the panel, would you be able to add those into the chat, and then we'll be able to get off to a flying start with some already ready to be fielded by the panel. Good morning, Rama.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Not bad.
Good. Very nice to see you. Over to you.
Okay, so at the Student Union, we've basically got a bunch of ways we try and collect feedback for our insights team, advice centre, and also my favourite is our START data. So START obviously is student academic representation tool. Due to some of the issues with STIX, we didn't get it out the same way we could. So our data is quite limited. However, a lot of the things I'm going to mention which is like experiences, are something that we've heard from students just conversationally. So they are backed up and they are things that we've heard in our rep conference as well. So although they're limited in numbers, it is something we have seen wider. So if I just talk about a lot of the negatives that we saw, there was a lot of positives as well. But if I talk about something that we can do something about, the themes were course and learning content, teaching on course. This is kind of positive because students were vocal about these. These are the ones that students were experiencing the most out of, so they were quite vocal. That's probably why they came up a lot more. And students felt quite neutral around learning resources. So that meant library, Moodle, etc. So those are kind of the themes. if I go into sort of course and learning content and some of the things that we've heard throughout it, I think some students found Panopto as a useful tool for learning and would like to see it more in the future, which is really good. A few students found their content in COVID unsatisfactory, and it's probably because of fewer practical lessons and courses focusing on certain skills more than others. So these are kind of things we expected because of the changes, and now it's kind of managing expectations. Some students concerned about the can't speak this morning. Some students are concerned that course content could change without notice, and it goes along with a lot of other themes that we saw, was like lack of communication or like things that they could understand. Some students found it difficult to keep up with pre-recorded lectures, but they suggested that adding a note with every pre-recorded lecture on what the lecture content is and what needs to be covered for the next week could resolve this. So that's one point that I'm not sure how far that goes, but it's a good point. Just in terms of university facilities, one student was concerned that the risk when they use university facilities to study, they're worried about the risk. So there could be more communication around that and what the university has done in terms of COVID and the preparation. Classic, a student wanted their course sort of fees reduced, which is something we're always going to see. And I've also picked out some specific ones from Tech and CCI. So I think Tech had, unfortunately, had the least amount of satisfied students, I think because of the amount of changes that had happened, both on their material on their course or teaching quality. And in CCI, I think a few students were concerned with teaching in terms of the practical experience with equipment that was lacking. Obviously, it's because it's COVID, and lectures ending earlier than scheduled, very few lectures scheduled, and lectures not addressing concerns with delivering practical elements for courses. So again, communication. Those are the main things we picked up. I know it's probably not the best data, but it is something to start off with in the sort of first kind of half term. So I hope it was useful. I'll pass it on to the students though, because I'm sure their experiences are a lot more important than the data.
Thank you, Rama. Would you like to introduce the students that you brought with you today?
Yeah, so we should have Sandra, Patience, Farida and Rosa.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Rosa.
Yeah, I'm Sandra. Good morning.
Good morning. We're very happy to have you. Thank you for joining us. And we do always caveat these discussions, Rama and I suppose, by saying obviously we're not expecting you to be a voice for all students at the university, but it is very, very interesting to learn about your personal experiences, because there are sometimes themes which can be carried over and things that we can learn from. So what we will do now is just field questions from the chat. So please can I ask the participants to post any questions that you would like to put to the panel. Perhaps if we start off by discussing the fact that a lot of your lectures have moved online, and there has been an increased, obviously, amount of distance learning as a result of how we've adjusted to COVID. Can I just ask generally, have you found that to be positive in that you've had a flexible learning experience in terms of when you might watch lectures or how you might access material? Could I ask Patience initially? Hi, Patience.
Hi. I do think it's been quite flexible, but at the same time, it's a bit weird to get used to. Whereas, like, interaction for me works better, like when I'm actually talking to my lecturers and engaging in, what I'm doing. But at the same time, it's not been too bad.
Thank you. Destiny.
Sorry, Amy, I'm not a student.
Oh, sorry, I've wrote the wrong name down. We've got Sandra. How are you, Sandra?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. I didn't even realize. But with me, I found it a challenge actually because with my course, I study architecture, so I feel like you have to be more interactive. So in fact, that the like studio was online and like all the seminars, I actually found that very difficult. But I feel like it's it's a good challenge to take on, and I feel like when you get past this and you get used to this, you can actually just do it anyhow. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like it's been a challenge, but I feel like it's gone for like the better. And
fantastic, thank you. We've got some really interesting questions coming through in the chat now. So if we start with Andy, so he's asked if as a university, or if you take it in the context of your course, if there were 3 things that you think that we should focus on for teaching block 2, so when we come back in January, what would they be? They might be very, very small changes, or it might be something a bit more broad. We haven't yet heard from Farida, so perhaps if we hello.
Hiya.
Hi.
So one of my changes would generally just be about communication. As a final year student, I found it quite hard getting into doing my dissertation. And I know during the introduction week, I met with my dissertation tutor and was told that we'd have the communication, like they'd get into contact with us. I've now had one of my submissions for 10% of my dissertation and haven't heard from my dissertation tutor. So it gets quite worrying because I do understand, like, I can reach out, but it's the thing that I've been told they'll come to me. So it's, if that message changes, then that needs to be communicated. And especially where we can't see each other face to face, it's just very difficult to kind of get into contact.
Absolutely. And do you feel like you are sort of encouraged to reach out, as you put it, to contact your tutors? Is that something that is explicitly kind of asked of you, or does it sometimes get a bit confusing?
It does get a little bit confusing. I do feel like I can reach out. I don't have a problem doing that. It's just that we were kind of told that so we met with our dissertation group, and we were kind of told that it would be best if she reached out to us for meetings before deadlines, etc. And I haven't had that, so.
I'm sorry to hear that. Has anyone else got any comments around communication? Are you able to access information in Moodle, which is really where the kind of the bulk of this should happen? Perhaps if I send that to Rosa, because we haven't heard from you yet, Rosa.
Yeah, I feel like I've had quite a positive experience. When it comes to like most of my lecturers and staff, as well as our general timetable, just letting us know where we're supposed to be and stuff. My lecturers actually send me reminders, so I think that's quite good of them. So like the whole online thing, it's not as bad as it could have been. In terms of my supervisor, I'm currently doing my dissertation as well. And I found that the communication's been quite good actually. We send emails back and forth and we arrange tutorials. So yeah, I feel like I've had quite a positive experience.
Fantastic, thank you, Rosa. That's reassuring to hear. I really like this question from Harold. So he said, I've been beginning to think that my pre-recorded lecture clips with interweaved quizzes are better than my old Sage on the Stage face-to-face lectures. Would you agree with that? Has some of the delivery been perhaps more exciting, more dynamic than it would have been if you had been in the lecture hall? I'm happy to open that up to the panel if anyone wants to come in.
I've really enjoyed online lectures. I feel like it works quite well for me. I do see it from the other point of view though, if you don't have a lot of self-discipline, that flexibility gets a bit too much, because it's really down to you as to when you watch your lectures and when you partake. But I've really enjoyed doing online lectures. In most cases it's been the same as what it would be face-to-face, just because my course is quite content heavy, and it was expected, so yeah.
Is there any, if you were sort of to narrow that down a bit, is there anything specific about the online lectures that make them work for you?
I've forgotten what the platform is, but where they record the lectures, I just think it's quite, it's been useful for us to have it there so we can then go back and, have the voiceover, because previously we would have just had the slides and it would have been, if you're allowed to record in the lectures, then you would, but previously it would have just been a slide, so it's been quite useful to have the voice there as well.
Fantastic, that's great. Would anybody else like to come in on that? Is there anything that you've experienced that's been a positive learning experience as a result of the changes in delivery?
I feel like we can like fit more things in a day as well, because obviously we can kind of rewatch the lectures, and like for me, I like doing work in the evenings, for example. So I find it better to watch like the lectures over in the evenings and just kind of get over and done then, except like, waking up at 9 a.m. where, that's just not for me. I like doing work in the evening. So I feel like the lectures part have been positive, but obviously the studio and the seminar bit is tricky, but at the same time, we're all used to it now. So I feel like it's fine. It's just, I feel like I just want to say something about the communication as well. So with the communication with the tutors, like I feel like you don't have the same relationship, because obviously you just met them, but not like, there's a lot of people in the like seminar, I guess. So like not everyone gets to speak and engage with the tutor, which I think that bit is like the worst bit, because you don't really have a relationship with your tutor, so they don't really know what you're doing, like how they can help you. There's not much communication.
So I'm getting the sense that you're all feeling sort of quite distanced from
definitely
your tutors. What about your peers on the course, the other students on the course? Do you feel that you've had, as Rebecca says, are you feeling part of a community on your course? Is that kind of digital distance contributing to any feelings of isolation?
Do you know what? It's obviously difficult because no one really wants to message each other like with like people that you just met. But there's people from, because I'm in the last year, like I know people from before, so that's the reason like I communicate with some of the people. But our tutor does try to like put us in groups as well, so we get to speak to everyone. So like we have group activities, so which is, I feel like, better as well. She puts us in like break-up rooms, is that what it's called? And then we just get to speak amongst each other. So I feel like that's okay.
Fantastic, that's good to hear. Can we perhaps hear from Rosa? Have you been feeling part of the community on your course, Rosa? Have you managed to get to know your course mates?
Sorry, again, I was muted as well.
That's okay.
For me, I study sociology, and we actually have like a sociology group chat on Facebook from like first year. So I feel like that kind of set the foundations and made everything easier for like this year, because it's like we kind of do support each other in the sense that if anybody's confused with anything, it's like you can go to the group chat, ask questions, and like we'll all kind of like clarify for each other. And I think it's like literally everybody that studies sociology in my year, so that has been really useful. Like for example, I think for sociology this year, our referencing style changed, so I feel like that's been a bit confusing for everyone. But like within that group chat, we've just been able to like all come together, send resources and stuff to kind of like support each other and that sort of thing.
Fantastic. That is really interesting, because I think we have heard from many courses that students are finding mechanisms to support themselves through social media, through WhatsApp chats, or I know Discord is also being used in some faculties. Rama, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of come in with like the first year experiences from me and Destiny. I know we did a lot of outreach and we spoke to a lot of first years, and I think sort of distance from your course has been quite a much bigger thing than it has been for other years, obviously, because they've had those connections sort of made, whereas when you come in for first year, it can be a lot more scarier. So there is that feeling of isolation and feeling lost from your course a lot more prevalent in first years than it is for anyone else. So just wanted to add that in.
Thank you, Rama. I think that is really important, isn't it? Because we have obviously got students that are, as you said, Rosie, are coming back. You've got existing support networks because you've already been at the university, and first years do have a very different experience. I'm interested in the comment here that Tom's made. So the idea that sometimes some of the interesting conversations happen sort of as you're ploughing out of lectures and you're perhaps walking out together. Would it be useful to have some sort of online space after that in terms of Tom's used the word decompress, so something where you could discuss the lecture and takes things forward? Do you feel like sometimes it's cut off a bit when you've got your live online lecture?
If I go, none of my lectures are online. They're both pre-recorded. So I don't feel like that would really make a difference because we don't have that sense of community as we're not all online at the same time. It's pre-recorded. You go on, watch your lecture whenever you want to. But yeah, even when we were in university, none of those conversations as we were leaving were pretty important. It was kind of do your lecture and leave. So for me personally, it doesn't really make a difference.
I see what you mean. Yeah, so you're watching yours obviously in your own time as they're pre-recorded. Yeah. How about somebody who's had the live lectures delivered? Patience, I think that was you, wasn't it?
I think the live lectures have been useful. Like sometimes my lecturers actually email me and ask me how I've been finding the course, which is good. The only thing is the organization has been a bit confusing for me. There's times where I go on Moodle and there's a link for the session and sometimes there isn't and I have to go on my email, but it's always there either way. So in terms of delivery, it's still sort of the same way like it was delivered back in first year and second year. And whereas it's our dissertation year, the lecturers do try to deliver as much that is useful to us and involve like our dissertation in different modules.
Absolutely. And that kind of segues, I think, quite nicely to Cherry's question, which is about the length of pre-recorded lectures that you're getting on Moodle. Any comments about, for those of you that have experienced that, the length of them? What length have you received? Have they been too long, too short?
I do think sometimes they're a bit short, and I feel like maybe some lecturers feel as though they don't want to go as forward as they usually would because of the amount of students that attend some sessions online. But they do always get back to you and leave like the slides on Moodle for us to catch up.
Rama.
Sorry, just to chime in here.
No, please do.
Just looking at, because obviously I'm on placement year, but I looked at some of the law materials and they had a really, really good structure. So they would have obviously pre-recorded sessions, but then they would have an overview, like a video just for overview of that 1 week. And it'll talk about the different resources that you have and how it can be utilized. So I think it just gives that rounded sort of approach, whereas you're not seeing loads of different lectures, you kind of just pin them week by week. So I think that was one kind of best practice that I'll probably want to share.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. So in terms of the recorded lectures, would you rather see, we've got a question there, would you rather see the lecturers' faces? Would you prefer it to be audio only? We do try as much as we can to personalise the resources. Has anyone got any views on that? Perhaps if we start with Sandra.
So I definitely find it better when I can see my lecturer's face because I feel like I don't have a reason for it. I just feel like, I feel like I'm more engaged because sometimes like when you're just looking at the slides and listening to a voice, I feel like the expressions are very important to me personally. So yeah, that's my opinion.
Thank you. Does anyone agree with Sandra there?
Yeah, I really like seeing my lecturers' faces as well on the lectures. So with one of mine, she does like a little introduction video first, and then it's just the lecture slides with the audio. And then for my other, his face is always in the corner. And I really do like seeing it. It kind of brings back that, not necessarily face to face because it's not in real time, but it's better than nothing.
And would anyone else like to come in with that till we move on? While we move on to the next question. Okay, so we have, as a university and as a sector, been very aware of digital poverty. So the access that students might have to equipment, to internet, and are very mindful not to always assume that everybody has the same access to that. So there's a question from Rebecca, which I'd like to move to next, which is how widespread do you think the problem of digital poverty is? Is this something that you have heard about from your peers, something that you have struggled with yourself? Before we move to the panel, Rama, would you like to comment on that initially?
Yeah, I know me and Destiny have had a few emails from students around it. In terms of how widespread it is, I'm not sure, but it does always surprise us because we kind of just assume that everyone has a laptop and an internet. But that's just not the case. And thankfully, the university has stepped in and provided sort of money and resources for that. However, it's kind of sort of raises the question as to whether students do know about it. Is it communicated? Because we know that sometimes things aren't communicated the best way. So I'll be interested to hear how students kind of feel about it.
Absolutely. Perhaps if we go to Rosa first, have you any comments about that, Rosa? Anything that you've heard from your friends or yourself?
Yeah. Personally, I have a laptop, so I've been able to do everything as normal. But some of my friends have actually come to me with the issue that they don't have a laptop, and when they've tried to get one, like I think the university's told them like they're kind of not eligible for it. So I think it makes it a bit hard, especially during these times, like if you're not able to access a laptop to be able to do your work at home, because like not everybody's willing to go to the library. So I feel like that's an issue that could maybe be sorted.
Absolutely. So perhaps we haven't been as visible as we could have been with the support. I know that it is available, but as with anything, I think there are kind of caveats around it. Farida, is there anything that you'd like to comment about that?
So like Rosa, I also have a laptop, so I haven't experienced it. And from my peers, I haven't heard anything, but it is something that people wouldn't really want to openly talk about. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was a bigger issue than what we do think it is. And like Rosa was saying, some people don't want to go to the library. It's not because they don't want to do work, but in the current situation, you kind of have to pick and choose what is important to you. So, but yeah, I've received communication from the uni about help with the laptops and stuff. So I feel like the communication has been there. So yeah.
That's reassuring to hear. Thank you. And Patience, would you like to comment on that?
Sorry, I was muted. I do think the uni can be helpful sometimes, but me personally, I had a problem with my laptop recently, and I did ask for a laptop and explain my situation, and I was told that I'm not eligible for one based on household income, which was a bit frustrating for me because my parents are sort of strained at the moment as they'd gone away and my mum's not been working. So I like to study like in my own space. So going to the library is a bit of a stretch, but at the same time, I know it can be helpful. Like there's times I'm going to need books. So I'd say that's the only issue I have really in terms of uni, but everything else has been fine.
Thank you. That's really really interesting to hear. And I think there is another side to this, isn't there? There's the equipment, the internet access, but also the space. And I know certainly we felt that as well in terms of the teams from the university who are still working at home. So I do sort of empathise with needing to find peace and quiet. It's not always available. We've got a question here, which is from Kian. So it says, one of my year three teachers told me that she found it hard to engage with asynchronous online material. So that's asynchronous in terms of you're doing it in your own time, but preferred the sessions that were kind of delivered live on Zoom because they feel more like the proper lectures or the proper teaching. Would you agree with that?
I do feel like live lectures do give more emphasis because when it's recorded or you're just seeing it on Moodle, sometimes you can be a bit discouraged in terms of like actually keeping up or staying on top of your work. But I think it depends on you as a person.
Thank you. And would anyone else like to comment on that? Sandra?
I think that live lectures are better as well because with me, like obviously I try to catch up and everything, but sometimes you just get behind and like but then in the back of your head you're like, oh yeah, the lectures are recorded so I could just watch them later. But then sometimes like you just never get to watching them and then you just have new work on top of that. And if you're not, so I feel like live lectures could be better. I feel like they make me engage more. And like just in case like even anyone asks me a question, I want to be there just to know. But sometimes I feel like when you're watching it later on, it feels like maybe it's not the same because it's not, I don't know how to explain that, but it feels like you're watching a movie, like it's just you're not as engaged, like it's not live, so it's I don't know how to explain it, but yeah.
Yes, I think that's a good comparison, isn't it? You're kind of watching a movie that you might sort of dip in and out of. Farida, have you got any comments on that? Do you prefer it when it's?
I've only had the experience of a live seminar, which I do really enjoy. I'd heard really bad things about the breakout rooms, but it was actually really positive because I did know some of the people in my breakout group. But I do kind of prefer having the recorded lectures. Just like I said, my course is quite content heavy, and I don't know, it just works well with my timetable, and that flexibility is really positive for me because then it gives me the chance to do other things. So yeah.
Yes, it is such a personal preference, isn't it, in terms of how you study. Rama, is there anything that you'd like to add to that? Have you in your discussions with the wider student community heard about preferences to do with asynchronous or synchronous?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. It's so difficult because it just goes down to the individual. It depends on like whether you want that interactiveness or that encouragement from your lecturer to be like, this is what's happening, and it kind of just like that leads you along the way, or you kind of have a lot of things on the side that you'd prefer to do on your own. So it really does depend on how you learn best. Personally, I prefer it when I have interactive sessions because it's kind of like, I don't know, you're actively learning rather than when you're watching it, you're kind of passively learning. So that's my preference, and I know it kind of depends on the individual. So that's kind of a mix of things that we've heard from students as well.
Absolutely. Sorry, apologies for my dog going a bit crazy in the background. There's a question here that Rebecca's asked, and Harold has picked up on it as well. Why do you think that students might not turn their video on when they're in these online spaces? Is there anything that we can do to encourage students to share their video? And James makes a very good point there that it could be to do with bandwidth. Have you any advice for us about that? Perhaps if we take that to Patience.
Okay, I think what I would say is maybe just encouraging students to feel more like they're in the actual lecture hall, like how it would usually be. But I think the effect of that is, for me, when I'm when I'm in a lecture online, I feel more like I'm not watching a video, but listening to what my lecturer is saying whilst taking notes. So for me, that's still interactive, but the times that I would show my face is like if there's a question that's asked or it's something that I want to ask myself. But I do feel like there's a pressure of like no one else having their videos on, so you just feel a bit awkward, should I say.
That's really interesting. Do you feel you kind of go with what's presented to you when you go in? If no one else has got theirs on, you turn yours off?
Yeah, most likely.
Would anyone else like to come in on that? Farida, you're nodding there.
Yeah, I remember when I had my first online seminar, I kind of went in with the thing of I'm not going to have my camera on, not for any specific reason, but I just thought no one else would. And then I joined the session and everyone had their camera on, so I turned mine on as well and it was fine. But I do think it's that give and take of lecturers kind of understanding as well, you know, like, yeah, bandwidth, but also some people might just not feel comfortable in the place they're in. Not everyone has a lovely home that they'd like to show on the camera, even if you're sitting in a corner. But, you know, it's just kind of give and take, really.
Yes, absolutely. And we do have a follow-on question for you, Farida, from Andy. So he's asked, are you just watching the video lectures, the recorded content, or are you also engaging with interactive activities that might be posted for you on Moodle? Have you got the mix of all of that together?
The interactive side kind of comes more from the seminars. I don't really have I don't have anything interactive in the lecture, really. I kind of I do take notes as I'm reading the lecture, but there's nothing interactive. So
would any of the other student panel like to come in on that? Are you being kind of overwhelmed with quizzes and apps to use and new different technologies, or are you finding that it's kind of just been the recorded sessions? Perhaps if we go to Sandra for this one.
I don't think I've had the issue with it. I think I've been finding it, like, with me, like, my lectures are all recorded, so I don't really have like interactive lectures at all. I mean, because they're just like, you know, the tutor just has like, the lecturer has to just say what happens, like what you need to do. But for my studio sessions, it's more like, do you know what? I kind of got lost in the question, so I don't even know what I was.
That's okay. I can remind you. So we were there were some comments in the chat about kind of the mix of apps, so tools, quizzes, the different kind of activities you might be asked to be completing. Have you had a mix of different types of things to do through the VLE, or has it mainly been the kind of recorded content in the seminars?
Do you know what they've like? For my course, instead of like, because usually we have like a sketchbook and stuff, because obviously we just do more like artistic things, but now we have to have like a blog which everyone has to then take for like their, well, they don't have to, but you're kind of starting to build your portfolio, which is, I think it's a good idea. But I don't think the blog has been explained properly as well, so I don't think like, we just got told to kind of make a blog and just put our stuff on it. But I know some people are very like good with using it already because they've had like maybe past experience writing blogs and like putting it together. But like, for me personally, I'm kind of struggling to do that because I don't know how to, you know, what to put in it, if I'm meant to, like, what I'm meant to have in it. But that's about it. That's the only kind of technology and the new like app that we got introduced.
Thank you. And Rosa, would you like to come in on that? Have you felt overwhelmed by lots of different tools, or have you had kind of a similar experience in terms of recorded lectures?
Yeah, most of my lectures have either been online or pre-recorded or both. And I feel like my lectures are trying to use like new tools to kind of like try and get us to engage a lot more with like the content and the course. So one of my courses has introduced us to like Padlet, which kind of allows us to like make comments and stuff on like things that I said in the lecture. And I think that's really good because it does like fuel conversation and stuff, which, yeah, I just think that's really good to have.
That's great to hear. We've been big advocates of Padlet, and I do believe that Andy is running some sessions throughout the day on using Padlet. So if anyone's here and is interested in having some training on that, please do go along to those. I'd just like to pick up that that final question there. So as a university, we brought in different terminology for how we're teaching, and we called it blended and connected. We did a lot of work with the courses and with the course teams about what that meant and how that should impact their teaching. What does that terminology mean to you as students? Does it mean anything? Have you heard it before? Just so that we know how to sort of take that forward. So perhaps if we start with Farida on that, have you heard that term before, blended and connected?
I think I've heard the blended learning, but I've not heard it in like conjunction with the connected. I can't really tell you what it means to me, other than I have online lectures and I go in for 40 minutes for a seminar. It doesn't really mean much to me.
Okay, that's interesting. And anybody else? Patience, have you heard blended and connected before? Does that mean anything to you?
I don't think I've heard of it before, but when I do get emails from like my personal tutor, they do encourage us to feel as though we're still in the same community, like how we'd be when things are more interactive, and not to get too drawn away by the whole flexibility of not actually going into university, which I feel like is why a lot of people switch off their cameras, like what we were talking about before. Because the time that you'll be waking up and the fact that you're not moving around as much as you usually would, especially in lockdown. So I think it's a term that's encouraging us to, should I say, unite in education. So that's what I think.
Fantastic, thank you. Anybody else? Rama, I know that you met with your new course reps. How did they interpret the blended and connected terminology?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I like connected. I hate blended, because I think it's just for students, they don't register it in. It's kind of like what you're given. In terms of course reps, I know we did an activity where we kind of listed, it was kind of that list, Amy, that we created, where it's like, this is kind of the stuff you should be expecting. Have you been receiving that? And a lot, like the majority said they have, which is quite surprising, because I don't know why I expected them to just not have all those materials, but it is a positive surprisement, I guess. So I think in terms of them understanding what is expected of them in this blended and connected approach, I'm quite passionate. Yeah, that's true, Andy. But yeah, it was. I think in terms of blended and connected approach as a term, it's not really registered. But in terms of what the baseline is in its expectation, I think it is understood. You have that interactiveness, and then you have that sort of independent study. I guess. I hope that answered your question.
It does, absolutely, and I think it's always a balance, isn't it, between how much do we unpack that, and how do we frame it in terms of how students might understand what we're aiming for. I think that's something that personally really interests me, and I think we've probably got some work to do in terms of translating what blended means, because it is literally referring to a mix of online and face-to-face delivery, and perhaps we need to be more explicit about that. This is why these conversations are so useful. We've got a few minutes now, because we are going to finish at roughly about 10 to enable people to have a break and to move into the next session. So before we do, I'd just like to come back to that question which was raised earlier, which was, what would be your on your wish list for starting back in January? What would be perhaps your one thing that you'd like to see more of? So if we can just articulate that in a couple of words or in a sentence, and we'll go through the panel. So perhaps if we start with Rosa, what would be your one thing on your wish list?
For me, I would probably say I wish that all of my lectures were recorded, because although some of them are, there's not always that option of being able to go back to everything, especially like if there's nothing that's been recorded. So yeah, I mean, because like for that one lecture, we get given like a summary on like a document, but I feel like there's only so much that you can get from a summary. Like it's not really in depth and stuff. But yeah, I'd probably just say I'd really like everything to be recorded. Yeah.
That's really useful, thank you. And Sandra, what would be on your wish list?
Do you know what? Similar to Rosa, like with my studio, if I miss like one session of studio, we have that once a week. I remember when I missed a session of studio, after that, like I don't even think we get a summary like that's very detailed. We just get told what we need to do for next week, which is okay. Like I'll know what I need to do for next week, but at the same time, like I don't actually know what's been said, or like I don't know. It says what I need to do for next week, but I don't understand it, if you know what I mean. So that's why, like, I had to get in contact with my tutor and say, can we actually have a meeting, because I just want to understand what we're doing more, because I feel like I'm getting lost. And yeah, that's one thing for me.
Absolutely, and I think that kind of covers what we were talking about in terms of very, very clear communication and guidance at each stage. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank
Farida,
you.
what's on your wish list?
What's on my wish list? I feel like I've just generally had a positive experience with online learning. I think I've become quite used to it now. If anything, it would just be my one seminar that going face to face to turn into an online one, because I feel like more people would turn up if it was online.
Absolutely, and I think that's something that we will be considering as we've set a precedence here, haven't we? And finally, patience. What would be on your wish list?
I'd say for me to have more more work that's put on the slides on Moodle, because as well as lectures are recorded, like when you're catching up from when you've missed one, sometimes there's not enough content on the slides, because a lot would have been said in the recorded lectures, and some people prefer more visual learning rather than listening to things. And I'd say maybe support with group work, like lecturers encouraging groups to have like Zoom meetings and things like that, because as a student, sometimes they don't really try with that and it affects the work. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a really valuable point. Thank you. And I'd just like to finish by again just thanking you so much for your honest feedback, and that's something that we will take forward. Rama, perhaps if you'd just like to use the last minute of the session to talk about the next steps for the Students' Union in terms of collating the student voice.
Yeah, so as part of like RepCon, I know Amy, you've been quite involved, but we are trying to get our reps to be a bit more sort of prompt students in thinking critically about their course. So that's one of the things we've been working on. Also pushing out our start tool is really useful, and just pushing out to a lot more students, because you're able to sort of give feedback, both positive, negative and neutral. And it's kind of not restricted to the idea that feedback on your course is basically bashing it. It's not what we want to do. So we want to share best practice as well. So those are one of the biggest things. And also our campaign on student expectations. Obviously, if a student isn't getting the right amount of support on their course, they need to flag it up, and setting that culture in place as well would be really important for us. So hopefully that will be continued in the next few years as well. But I think that's about it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll finish there and look forward to seeing you in the next session.